So today we're talking about the differences between coconut husk fiber and peat moss. Coconut husk fiber is somewhat new to most gardeners. It's been around for quite a while in the hydroponic industry. It's touted as a more sustainable option to peat moss. It's just made from it's byproduct made from harvesting coconuts. So as you can see, the consistency is relatively the same, but the properties are somewhat different. So one of the advantages to coconut husk fiber is the packaging. So it comes in compressed bricks and a big cube. You just basically throw it in a pail, add water, swells up. One of the advantages that coconut husk has over peat moss is that it is more water friendly. It absorbs water faster. It doesn't shed water like peat moss can do. They'll add wetting agents to peat moss to make sure that it absorbs the water easier. But sometimes when the peat moss dries out, it still does. So you just got to leave the water sit there. The peat moss will absorb it. Peat moss does hold water longer and better than coconut fiber. So if you're prone to overwatering, coconut fiber is probably better for you. If you're prone to underwatering, peat moss is probably better for you. I'll just show you here. We hydrated this a couple days ago. It's been sitting in a pail. We put it in the tray. But just to kind of show you how much water's in there. So you can see that it's pretty easy to squeeze the water out. And it's fairly wet. You don't need to have it this wet when you're planting, but if you're mixing it in with existing soil as a soil amendment, that's not going to be a big deal. One of the other things to talk about is pH. The pH of coconut husk fiber is 5.8 to 6.8, so very plant friendly. Peat moss tends to be 3.5 to 4.5, so very acidic. Quite often people will add a dolomitic lime as a pH balancer to offset that acidity. The other problem that coconut fiber has is that it's high in potassium. It can actually cause your plants to lack calcium because of that. So if it's not pre-buffered with a calcium nitrate solution, you'll also have to add lime to it in order to replace that calcium. So kind of very similar that way. Different reasons why you're adding lime, but you're still adding the same thing to get a good final result. So we're gonna end up planting in both mediums here today. We're gonna plant some cat grass and just see if we get similar results, better results from one or the other. One of the things to talk about is sustainability and affordability between peat moss and coconut fiber. Peat bogs grow very slowly, and so they are, and they're essentially strip mined. So there is some conservation concerns there. That simply put speaks to the sustainability of peat moss, at least at this point, but definitely could be an over-harvested issue. Coconut fiber, byproduct, millions of coconuts are grown each year. This is the part of the plant that's not used, so really, really sustainable, but almost entirely produced in India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam. So getting it to a North American market becomes problematic. One other thing to talk about with coconut husk products is how they're processed will determine the quality. If coconuts are harvested ripe, they're processed with fresh water. If they're harvested unripened, they're actually processed in brine. This can lead to a really high salt content in your coconut fiber. Most coconut fiber, like this one here, is pre-washed. So, but just make sure that you find that out before you use it, because the high salt content is not good for your plants. So this is a follow-up video to our last video comparing peat moss to coconut coir. We planted some oat seed in both to see what the germination would be like, to see what the growth would be like, comparing again how each holds water. As you can see, we've had pretty much 100% germination in both trays. Both plants are growing really, really well. We had domes on them. They've clearly gotten, much longer than the domes would allow. This coconut coir is definitely drier than the peat moss. You can see it's a little bit of moisture there, but it's pretty dry, whereas the peat moss is quite moist. So peat moss definitely holds moisture longer than the coconut coir, but really not really affecting the plants a whole lot in this time frame. So just one thing to note, we did decide to flip the grass up and check the roots development, and as you can see, there is actually considerably more root development in the peat moss than in the coconut coir. This could be a moisture thing. The peat moss holding more moisture might have encouraged more root development. It could be a nutrient thing. Clearly, coconut coir is a good alternative to peat moss, and just you might have to water it more often.